Our book today on Good Books Radio is Monologue, What Makes America Laugh Before Bed by Jon Macks. Jon Macks has been Jay Leno's chief writer on The Tonight Show for 22 years. And so we're going to talk to him. I'm Dr. David Strong. I'm your host. And we're going to have a great show, a fun show, because we're talking to a man who is known in the industry for being one of the best comedic writers in the world. He writes for politicians. He writes for Chris Rock, for Steve Martin. He's written for a lot of the famous award shows, Academy Awards, Golden Globes, Country Music Awards. He writes for Miss Piggy. So he is a prolific comedic writer, and he's going to talk to us about comedy and how it works and what it's like to work for someone like Jay Leno. Book List says of his book that it's a lighthearted, informative account of the creation and impact of that deceptively simple verbal phenomenon, the joke, and in particular, the jokes told on late-night TV. Without Jon Stewart on late night, fans may need something else to do, and this book should help. And I can highly endorse that idea because I fell off the couch reading this book. You know, a lot of books about comedy aren't really funny, because you start digging into comedy and the comedy disappears. But this book is really funny. So let's talk now to Jon Macks. You took a big risk in jumping from political consulting, of all things, to comedy writing. I like that story of how you went from the security, so to speak, of the political consulting to the, what was the line you said? You went from a 99% certainty or something?
Yeah, there was absolutely no chance whatsoever that I was going to succeed in comedy writing, because I was a political consultant and was doing okay and making a nice living, and we know, of course, how wonderful it is to work with elected officials. They're just wonderful people. But I got the chance to, I for fun, I sent some jokes into Jay, and he was before he took over the show, and he started to use them. And I got a call from him, I think it was February '92, and he said, I like your stuff. Why don't you come work on the show?
You sound just like
him.
So
I told my, So I told my partners, I said, look, this is, they've given me a 13-week contract, which is what you got. I said, look, this is '92. I said, I'll be gone May and June. I'll be back in, end of July. I said, we'll be fine. And that 13 weeks ended up being 22 years.
Wow.
I'm guessing, Bill, that they've closed the partnership. I mean, I haven't checked. I haven't talked to them for the first year in the Bush administration, but I suspect that it's done.
Well, how do you today, if a young writer gets signed to write for The Tonight Show, the new one, what do they get paid?
Here's what I think. You don't get paid. People will say, well, the freelancers get paid by the joke when they send it in. But when you're hired for a show like The Tonight Show or David Letterman, you're a member of the Writers Guild. So there is a Writers Guild minimum. And I know when I started, I think, and this is going back a few years, I think the Writers Guild minimum for 13 weeks, and this is just off the top of my head, was probably about $2,000 a week. And, as time goes on, you get bumps and you get raises and whatever, but it's not performance based on, they pay you for the number of jokes you use. If you keep writing and nothing's getting on, you're not going to have your job after 13 weeks.
Boy, what pressure.
Yeah, it was, again, it's akin to being a baseball player. The difference is I wrote 100 jokes a day, Bill, and I got 4 in, so my batting average was pretty low, 4%. Yeah, not a 400 hitter, mind you.
But that's kind of the Babe Ruth formula, isn't it? Though you swing for the fences all the time, and your average will come out to your benefit.
Absolutely, and it's people say, "How did you do it?" I said, "Volume."
Well, that's
not everyone's a keeper, but eventually, you'll stagger onto one you liked, and so like I said, if I would get 4 on, it'd be a great night. If I got 3 on, it's a good night. 2, I'm a little depressed, but there's always tomorrow. 1, hide the dog when I got home, and 0. My wife would find me at a bar at 1 a.m. Time to come home, sober up. It's not that bad.
Well, it sounds like a brutal business in many ways, but I guess after you're there 2 or 3 years, you've got some feeling of comfort. They're not going to cut you loose for a bad quarter.
Right, exactly. Exactly. It's and the one thing is Jay was so great because he would never. I'm sure there's some comics and hosts that are not easy to work with, but he was fantastic. Not once did he ever come in and say, "Well, those jokes were bad." You know what I mean? It was. He understands. It's hard to figure out what it is that makes people laugh, and he's the one telling it. And there's always the next day. Yeah. The point you make, Bill. Yeah, after 2 or 3 years, you have a comfort level with your ability to write jokes, but you don't know what the network's going to do in any given thing.
Well, I was shocked when they cut him loose because why? I mean, he was a top-rated guy. Why would you do that?
Yeah, it's here's my theory. I mean, the first time I think everyone. Because they actually told Jay back in 2004, in 2009, in 5 years, you're going to be off the air. Which was, again, that's kind of like your wife saying, honey, here's the deal. In 5 years, I'm leaving you. But let's just have a good marriage. That makes it tough. By the way, I've had a couple wives say that to me. But in that perspective, Bill, it was probably bad. In terms of what happened in 2014 with Jimmy taking over, I think Jay was ready to go bring the next part of his life. He's out there. He's touring his usual 290 nights a year, and I think he's happy, and Jimmy's doing a great job.
I teach a class at the university on the history of American comedy, and it's essentially the history of stand-up. And start with Twain and go through, Will Rogers all the way to Dane Cook. And, we look at all the great comedians, and thanks to God, we have YouTube. And, you can see things. When I started doing this 20 years ago, I didn't have any clips, so there's all these old sound clips and things that I could go with. But now we have even people have dug up old clips of Will Rogers even. But one of the things I find interesting is that some of the humor is rather timeless. Joan Rivers is a big hit with these modern kids even, her style of long ago they find funny. And same thing for Dangerfield. Showed him a clip of Dangerfield on Johnny Carson. They were hysterical with laughter. And but some don't work. Steve Martin doesn't work well for this younger generation. And I have an observation. I want to see what you think of it.
Sure.
It used to be that when I was a kid, even in my 20s and stuff, people used to come up to me and say, hey, I got a joke for you, or hey, I got a story for you. And now people don't do that anymore. They just come and show you their phone, say, did you see this? They just show you a one-liner kind of something that's quick and easy. And so what do you think of that? Do you think we've just changed in what we will embrace? Does it have to be short and tight?
Again, I guess you could make the argument that in a world of 140, characters on Twitter, the generation out there is looking for short and tight. But, I think it depends. Great comics. Chris Rock is going to be timeless. You can look at his concerts from 1996. 1999, and they are just as laugh out loud today as they ever were, and they're long pieces. You know what I mean? He's got jokes, but it's a real theory of the case. I think my argument would be, in a world of Twitter, in a world of short characters and whatever, 140 characters, you got to be quicker and get to it more.
But the master storyteller can still do it.
Absolutely. Again, you're not going to see, a Jack Parr couldn't make it today. That's going back, someone who has a very conversational style. And to be honest, separate and apart from all his problems, but Bill Cosby's style doesn't sell to me anymore today. Long story with one, and then my brother walked in, that wouldn't sell, besides the fact that he has a few issues. Yeah. But the people who are energetic, who have a narrative in their joke, who really are performers, whether it's Chris, Rock or whatever, I think that they're going to be timeless.
Well, you wrote mostly for monologues, right? And like when you write for Globe Awards or in any of the award shows, you're still writing nice, tight one-liners, pretty much, aren't you? Or are there setups for one to come?
Right. It's you're writing. You're writing jokes. Again, the difference is obviously a Tonight Show is a topical monologue. An award show is about the event and the nominees and the people there. So whether it's the Oscars or the Golden Globes, you're right. But it's still set up joke, or set up twist joke. When there are people though, I also like to write, longer pieces for people, what I'll call essay type things, where you're taking a topic and then really twisting it. They're better in print, to be honest, or they're better for 2 minutes with Marty Short type thing, where it's that kind of piece.
I like that you say that in your opening page of your book, you tell a story about how you need to write things down to see them. In fact, tell that story. That's a real good one about how you're driving down the expressway and you get a call.
Yeah, it's and it was back in probably September this year, and I've written for a number of political figures, and John Kerry is an old friend of mine, and written for him, and I get a call from the office, and they say, the Secretary of State has some remarks he has to give. The Prime Minister of India is coming to a luncheon in an hour. Secretary would like a little help. He wants an opening icebreaker for the audience. Now, I'm in the car. I'm on the 101 freeway in L.A. If you've ever been there, it's just sheer hell. It's literally it's some combination of Dante's ninth level of just people shooting, throwing things, traffic coming to a halt. So I'm saying, look, I'm going to have to pull over and write this. And so I'm telling them, look, I'm going to pull over in about 5 minutes, and then I look, and there's an incoming call. And I've been waiting for it all day. It's from the Muppets, because Miss Piggy is doing a duet with Michael Bublé on his upcoming special. So I've got the Secretary of State's office with him sitting there on one line, and I know this, and I see the incoming call, and I see it's from Miss Piggy. So I have to make a choice. And the choice is clear. I told the Secretary of State, I am sorry, I've got to jump off the line. I've got Miss Piggy here. Because let's be honest, John Kerry's out of a job in 2017, and Miss Piggy is forever.
That's a wonderful story. It's a great one to open the book with, I thought. Just marvelous. What's your favorite, if you have, I'm sure it's not a favorite, but some of your more favorite jokes that you wrote for Leno?
It's always tough when you write, and I actually did a count, which is one of the saddest things in my life, that I wrote 500,000 jokes.
Oh my!
And over the 22 years, and 18,000 made the air. So you look at it this way: that's 482,000 that didn't make the air. And there's landfills everywhere. If you drive by a landfill and look in, chances are there's a file card with one of my jokes on it.
I once saw.
So it's always tough. But one of my favorites is just this joke. It was right when Obamacare was getting the problem, and I love a misdirection joke. And it was a joke for Jay, and it was right when the website had opened up, and of course it was a disaster. And the joke was that it obviously made a setup because a rough day today. A friend of mine was given just 6 months by his doctor not to live to sign up for Obamacare, and the audience just went nuts, because everyone knew that Obamacare was a real disaster,
real mess. Yes.
Another one, and actually it was right around that time, was just because it just out of the blue was local mayor around here told the LA Times she was shocked to learn that her husband was arrested for running a meth lab. She had no idea he was running a meth lab out of her house. She had no clue. Well, of course, every house has 6,000 packets of Sudafed, don't they? Flu season's coming. Yeah, honey, I'm just going to the store to stock up. I'm feeling a little cold. I'm going to get 6,000 packets of Sudafed. So that to me, was a joke. It wasn't a story that everyone knew about Obamacare, but that's the opposite. No one really knew about this story unless you read page 13 of the LA Times. But once you tell it, you do the setup and explain it, then people go, "Oh, I get it."
Well, you're politically, you lean Democrat, right? But you don't mind skewering the Democrats.
It's from you, the person you work for, and working for Jay. The emperor has no clothes, so whoever's the emperor, you want to poke fun at that person. Now, again, I'm a Democrat. I've worked as a Democratic political consultant, and that stopped at the Tonight Show door for me. A joke is a joke. And, I would compartmentalize, and I probably even went overboard a little bit, probably did a little more on Democrats than Republicans.
Because you understand them better.
I understand them better, and we also had that benefit. And there was this guy named Bill Clinton you may have heard of.
Yes,
and,
yes.
Even though I'm a big Bill Clinton fan, he had, how should I put this, problems at times. with
Just a few.
And you can't not do that. I can't say, when I'm sitting there and reading that about a Paula Jones or a Monica Lewinsky or getting haircuts on the runway, you can't say, I can't possibly do that. No, you make fun of it because it's there. And just when George Bush was president, again, just the fact that he's a Republican, and I might not have agreed with everything he did, when he did something really silly or dumb, or said something that was not, didn't come out of his mouth the right way, I would jump all over it. And, there's more jokes about Democrats simply because during Jay's time, I think 13 of the years there was a Democrat in the White House. And those are the people, you're going with who's generating the news.
You have a really good point in the book about the different types of guests and why some are good and why some are bad, why actors make bad guests sometimes, and why stand-up comedians make wonderful guests most of the time. So. Yeah,
first of all, an actor generally is coming on to promote a movie, and so they're kind of Johnny One Note. And there are exceptions, but, they're coming on to promote Paul Blart too. Okay, fine. Secondly, they tend to actors and great actors, let's say Dustin Hoffman, Robert De Niro. Their career and their lives are spent playing other people. We don't know who the real Dustin Hoffman is. We don't necessarily know who the real Robert De Niro is. I think I have a pretty good sense who the real Jack Nicholson is, by the way, because I think that's who he plays on.
Yes, that's who he plays all the time.
But a stand-up is taking who they are and what, Roseanne Barr, the comic, is who Roseanne Barr is as the human being. And so they're talking by themselves. They also tend to spend more time preparing. They're not promoting necessarily a movie or a TV show, but they're on to, again, they're promoting a stand-up gig, but they want to be funny. So when a Marty Short or a Billy Crystal comes on a show, they are so prepared. They could talk for an hour and a half if you wanted.
They'll take over.
And also they're a comic tends to be observant and reactive, where an actress, and this is, I'm just making this up as I go along, an actor tends to be observant and then internalize it, whereas a comic wants to say something back. So if I had a choice of a one guest, give me a Chris Rock, a Marty Short, or Billy Crystal, versus giving me, and I'm sure she's a lovely person, but Dame Judi Dench.
Well, I've seen, for instance, Robin Williams just take over. Is that bad?
No, it's because you're looking for something. Again, today we would call it a viral moment, but when Robin was in his heyday, it's people talked about it. It was, did you see what Robin did on the Tonight Show? Did you see what Robin did with Carson? And there's a reason that, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think Robin was on one of Johnny's last two shows. I'm pretty sure of that, and it's because he was a favorite guest. A great host wants to make their guest look good. And when the guest, does something that everyone's talking about, that's a great thing for the show.
When Jay does something like, he says, "Well, we put together, Tom Cruise, these cards for you, and we want you to answer these questions." Does Tom know that that's coming?
He knows the bid is coming. You know what I mean, but not the things, because you want it to be real. You don't want it to say, "Well, Jay, my answer to that is blank." They know. It's like when President Obama shows up on Fallon. It's not, "Hey, we're going to slow jam the news." What?
So he has some heads up.
Yeah, exactly. then but there are of course some bits that are rehearsed. Like an example would be I know years ago Clint Black, a great country singer, came on and he did a romance novel with Jay, where they would write a novel. They literally stood there as if they were writing it, and one would say the setup and the other would say the punchline. Well, that's a rehearsed bit. That's written out and that's rehearsed, and that's good. But others, no, you want the spontaneity.
Well, you point out in the book that in Johnny Carson's time, which you still rate Johnny Carson as the best ever, part of it because of the context in which he worked. But you point out how he had all these guests that would line up on a couch, and the fact that they all stayed gave him opportunities for comedy that nobody has anymore.
Exactly. When you watch Johnny, you felt that everyone knew each other. Mm-hmm. You felt that they were all best friends. We were being invited to a party that we wished we could be at in person. We wished we could see, Dean Martin and George Gobel together. We wanted to know that Dean Martin and Bob Hope really hung out together, and we assumed that, although they probably saw each other at a golf tournament once a year. But you watched it, and it not only did that, but you were increasing the opportunities for comedy. And again, I'm not a math major. I don't know if it's geometrically or exponentially with each additional person in there. Nowadays, you have somebody come on, they do their segment, and they got to go, and that's because often they're coming on the same day as their premiere. Mm-hmm. Yes. So it's we tape at 4, and they're down at the Westwood Theater at 6 o'clock, to walk the red carpet. But there are guests who come and stay, and the Tom Hankses, the total pros, the Tom Hankses, the Billy Crystals, again, the Hugh Jackmans. They come on the show, they stay, they interact. I mean, really, you can't stay an extra 20 minutes.
What about our, the modern crew, or you can call them that, this new group coming in? They're not really that new, but, Fallon and Kimmel and these guys. Who's going to be the top in that bunch? I'm going to say that Jimmy Fallon. I can't say just Jimmy because it's Jimmy squared. I think Jimmy Fallon is pretty much taken over, and he's redefined the show. It's not a monologue-based late-night show like Jay's. It is sketch, and it's more of a variety show. And, celebrities love coming on because he doesn't make them feel uncomfortable, and he gets the best out of them. And he's truly a great host in that sense. Again, I'm not saying different is wrong, or better or worse. It's just different. And I think he will be the ratings king for many years to come. What fascinates me is Stephen Colbert coming on, because Stephen was brilliant in his show, but he played a character. Yeah, what's he going to do now?
And I have no idea. If I had some inkling, I swear, Bill, I would break it on your show. But I have no idea. And I'm sure he does, and I'm sure his writers do. Mm-hmm. But that's one where I'm going to tune in for sure, because I want to see what is this like. And again, if I had to speculate, I think he might come into more of the Johnny Carson mold, which would be people going, "Well, I didn't expect that," because there's a real need for that, I think. But again, we're going to find out when he comes on the air, but I promise you this: if I find out, I am calling back in and making sure you are the second to know.
All right, I appreciate it. That'll be quite a coup for just a little station in South Texas. But one of the other things I want to ask you is, as I was reading your book, I was thinking of early Woody Allen. You have some of a similar sense of humor, I think, good, tight one-liners. That's what I appreciate when I watch a Woody Allen movie, for that matter. It's just a good, tight writing. It's so admirable, so hard to do. Brevity is the soul of wit and all. But it occurred to me that, Woody Allen early on was a writer like you, and then he went on to do his own stand-up. And have you ever considered that?
It was interesting. I did. This is my dirty little secret, Bill. Okay. I am a lawyer. I went to law school.
Yes, I know.
We don't tell anyone. We all have things we're ashamed of. Where did I go wrong? When I was in law school, I did. I emceed the law school follies. You know what I mean? I did a little stand-up. I went out a couple nights a week. But I was also, had a great love of politics. And I don't know if this was conscious, but I knew that, you can either do 280 or 300 nights a year doing campaigns, or you can do 280 to 300 nights a year doing stand-up. But you can't do both.
Yeah.
And looking back, given my personality, I think it was a lot better for me to be behind the scenes. There's no wistful looking back. I could have been Jay Leno. I couldn't have been. Do you know what I mean? I couldn't have been. But, it's pretty nice to have two very distinct and different careers.
Well, let me ask it another way. Could you have been a comedy writer as good as you are had you not spent time in politics to see it from the inside?
I think that really helped for two reasons. One, it taught me how to write succinctly, because in the end I was writing 30-second TV spots. Mm-hmm. And so you had to, that's about 85 words. So you had to be able to take a candidate's, the message, the policy, the points, and boil it down. So I think it taught me the use of using words, sparingly and to have great impact. And I think that really helped. Add to that the fact that, Jay was a guy who loved politics and loved doing jokes about politicians.
That's true, yes.
Right when when he took over is right when the 24-hour news was really becoming bigger and bigger. It was headline news and CNN back then, which is of course expanded. You throw that in the fact that I might have had a little bit of insight into politics and political figures, and knew where to look in the story, and knew that if you want to do a joke about Martin O'Malley, who no one, of course, listening right now knows who he is at this point, but he is running for president. I knew where to look and to find out and to delve into that.
Let me give you a hard question. When I teach this class I told you about, and I take it seriously. It's kind of like a humor appreciation class. I want them to know these great old comics they would never otherwise know, and to have appreciation for them. I want them to understand that Twain told political jokes that worked just as well in his time as they do now. In fact, they hold up. You could use them today. But when I teach this class again, I'm going to use your book as a textbook.
Excellent. We like that.
But one of the things I want you to see if you can kind of riff on is 4 or 5 principles of writing for comedy. What are the rules?
It's the first thing is, and again, I would separate out between writing an act, and writing a topical monologue. Mm-hmm. And again, the rules, if I had to do them, is number 1, write tight. Mm-hmm. Second, don't try to convince people of something they're not going to believe. I can't convince anyone that Dan Quayle is a genius. You know what I mean? I just can't. I can't. So I'm not going to make that point. I'm not going to convince people that the Chicago Cubs are a dynasty. You know what I mean? What I can do though is talk about, when the Cubs have their inevitable fold somewhere in August. I can do nothing but disasters in the news. Hurricanes in the Bahamas. Stock market has crashed, and the Chicago Cubs. I can always then do that, and people are going to get it. So knowing that. And the third thing is you got to know your audience. We knew the Tonight Show audience. We knew there was people there watching, and we knew obviously the audience at home. Mm-hmm. And to flip it a bit, if you're writing for the Academy Awards, I remember the one year Jon Stewart, the first year he hosted, and I was writing for the show, but not the host. Jon had his own writers. But Jon called up, and they said, can you come in and look at the monologue? This is a couple days to go, and I went in and listened to it. I said, it's a great monologue, and everyone's real happy. He said, for your show. I said, Jon, this will die here. Uh-huh. And the reason was all the jokes were very political. And you've got Keira Knightley in the front row, who doesn't really want to hear about waterboarding at Guantanamo. All she cares about is her latest movie. Mm-hmm. So to get to talk, talk to your audience or know your audience about what they're interested in. And if you're at the Academy Awards, you want to talk about movies. You don't want to talk about politics. Yeah. If you're at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, you want to talk politics. And actually, with that audience, you probably want to talk movies too. So know your audience would be another principle.
Well, that's a very good one. I suppose if you're an outsider watching the Academy Awards, I think you're watching for their responses. The actors in the room. You're looking for their responses. You're always, I guess, from your point of view, you're always trying to figure out: are we writing for this audience? That's the immediate audience in the room. Or are we writing for the audience out there in the television world?
And that's the key, and that's what Billy Crystal and Steve Martin and hosts like that do so well. They do jokes that got the laughs there and that got the laughs at home too. Sometimes you do a joke, we call it for the room.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and when 33 million people are watching, that's not necessarily a good idea to do a lot of them.
Yes,
to do when
yes.
there's 500. But you do jokes that will appeal. And if you ever watch any of Billy Crystal's, who did he always go to? Jack Nicholson. Who did he always react to? Sing a song to? Jack Nicholson. Why? Because he knew Jack was perfect. Jack would laugh.
Uh-huh.
Jack was probably stoned, but Jack would laugh. He would kibitz. He would sit. Billy could sit on his lap, and you got the sense, okay, these are two guys who really like each other. It's great for us to laugh at that. So I said, not only know your audience, know your audience member. That's the key for the Oscars.
Well, that's beautifully, beautifully explained, and so true. Thank you so much for giving us all this time. I really appreciate it. It's been wonderful. Our guest today has been Jon Macks. I hope you've enjoyed him as much as I have. His book, again, is Monologue, What Makes America Laugh Before Bed. You should download this today. Go out and get it, because I promise you that you will laugh for hours. This will be an enjoyable read. For audiobooks.com and for Good Books Radio, I'm signing off. Here's hoping that all your books are good reads.